I'm convinced there's an industry for pretty much anything. Don't believe me? Listen to this. Why tiny cactus bugs in red food dye are 35 billion with a B industry. I said the same thing, huh? Exactly. So let's check this video out.
These white dots are bugs, and there's a good chance you've eaten them before. Raised on cactuses, they're called cochineals, and the acid in their guts makes a vibrant red dye. It ends up in tons of products, from strawberry yogurt to M&Ms to lipstick.
They have no right. They have no right. And I know some of y'all probably saying, well, it's your fault you don't know it in the products you're either ingesting or applying to your face and skin. You know what? You got a point. They're still wrong, though.
Yogurt to M&Ms to lipstick. Indigenous people across Latin America traded it for thousands of years. And in the 17th century, it was Mexico's second most valuable export, behind silver. It can be found on the walls of archaeological sites, in priceless paintings, and in the robes of kings. Synthetic dyes and pressure from animal rights activists have pushed some Mexican farms to abandon production altogether. And cultivation of cochineals has been disappearing.
It's a shame because it's the most powerful, brilliant red dye in existence.
This will be the last time Inés Carmona de Gante farms cochineals on her land.
Hicimos todo lo que se pudo.
Others, like Catalina Yolanda Lopez, say they'll do everything they can to keep their production going.
Valorábamos, digamos, la grana cochinilla como un tesoro que nos dejaron nuestros antepasados y que teníamos que lograr que sobreviviera.
But Catalina doesn't know how much longer her family can keep this ancient tradition alive.
Here we are again. Another small business being driven out, being forced out, being phased out for some reason. Why? What is happening? Aren't y'all noticing it in these videos?
Cochineal bugs are tiny parasites that live on cactuses. And the stuff that becomes the powerful red dye makes up almost a quarter of their weight. But it's not blood. It's actually a naturally occurring compound called carminic acid that's a repellent against predators like ants. Cochineals eat prickly pear cactuses, or nopales as they're known in Mexico. They have all the moisture and nutrients the bug needs to survive.
Y a otra planta ya no la alimenta.
Catalina's grandmother taught her how to raise cochineals when she was just 4 years old. Today, she's one of the last cochineal producers in all of Mexico, running a farm in Oaxaca. It all starts in her field of young nopales. These baby cactuses are cuttings of older ones.
Un nopal podemos sacar fracciones y multiplicarlo. Cada penca de abajo desarrolla dos, como si fueran conejitos. Aquí vemos.
Farmers have to wear gloves to protect against the cactus's needles as they cut off the paddles.
Espinitas de 3 milímetros que se entierran en la piel y que son muy dolorosas. En el cuerpo a veces se me llegan a encajar y como no los puedo buscar, pues se me quedan ahí, que ya parezco nopal.
Next, Catalina washes the cactus with soap and water. Only then can she place the cochineals on the paddles.
Estamos anidando lo que es la grana cochinilla madre, poniéndola dentro de un nido de palma
These look like finger traps, but they're actually tiny houses for the bugs. Catalina says no one makes them anymore, so she has to be careful not to break them.
Y dentro de 12 horas o 10 horas van a aparecer la grana cochinilla bebé caminando a través de los agujeros de las
The
uniones.
thing does look like a finger trap though. Just the other end isn't open. Where y'all first saw finger traps at? What movie? Mine, Addams Family. That was the first time I ever saw a finger trap. And he did it from both ends like that? Yeah. My bad. Took me down memory lane.
De la palma.
And once they've spread across the paddle, she hooks in a wire and hangs it up. Now the cochineals can get to munching.
Esto lo denominamos nopaloteca. En lugar de libros acomodados así, tenemos nopales. Aquí está protegida del aire, de la lluvia, del frío, del calor. Y este rack lo inventé hace más de 50 años.
Catalina constantly has to check for predators in the nopal library. Predators like this telero worm.
Y este se come la grana cuando está en estado larvario.
Every white dot you see here is a cochineal.
Tiene un polvo alrededor de ella como si fuera talco o harina.
It does.
The white powder acts as a glue to help the insects stick to the paddle. And it protects them against the sun too. Cochineals stick their probe into the cactus skin and suck out the water and nutrients.
Y en eso su cuerpecito empieza a trabajar como un laboratorio.
Those jokers look like bed bugs. You ever seen them do like a video on what bed bugs look like? That's what that kind of reminds me of.
The water and nutrients.
Y en eso su cuerpecito empieza a trabajar como un laboratorio, transformando los azúcares en ácido carmínico.
Only female cochineals produce carmine. The males are tiny, have wings, and fly away. But don't call these little guys beetles or cockroaches.
Las cucarachas tienen caparazón, tienen 2 antenas y son muy feas. Y estas son preciosas.
Once stayed over in Puebla, almost all of Carmona's nopal fields will be gone. She plans to replace it with corn and save just a few cactuses to raise cochineals as a hobby. She comes out to weed her fields and brush off any predators.
Las arañas, los bichos.
She looks for the perfect cactuses to bring back to her hungry bugs in the greenhouse.
Puede ser pequeño, puede ser chueco, deforme, pero debe de ser grueso, que tenga alimento.
Caretakers of the cochineals have to constantly move babies to new nopal paddles, and after 3 to 4 months, the female insects are ready for harvesting. Carmona uses a sieve to separate the bugs from their clothes, the powder and silk they make.
Y se queda nada más la grana.
As the dead cochineals dry out, their squishy pods solidify. Carmona sells them whole.
Todo este hilo de acá hasta allá para sacar 3 kilos de grana húmeda y nos queda uno de grana así.
Catalina and her daughter, Claudia Juarez Lopez, use a traditional metate to grind them into a brilliant red.
Es preferible hacerlo a mano, ya que nosotros creemos que es mejor la molienda, es más despacio y el color se concentra más.
Either way, it's very tedious work. It takes 70,000 bugs to make just 1 pound of dye.
70,000.
The powder has to be dunked in an alcohol solution and filtered to remove the insect parts. Catalina sells a kilo of her dried cochineal for about $150.
No es mucho.
Like, I respect the pride that goes into the work that they do. You know, you don't see too many people still doing certain things in small jobs like this by hand anymore. They're always looking for some type of machine or something to do. And I'm sure if they probably had the opportunity, they would take that as well to free them up to do other things. But to see them do things by hand and to see that pride they take in making sure it's done right, I can't do nothing but respect that.
Y con todo este trabajo que lleva, tendría un precio de 10,000 pesos por kilo.
Large food brands use carminic acid in everything, from
I
Yoplait
didn't
strawberry
know.
yogurt and Airheads to Nerds and M&Ms in the UK. But customers will never taste it.
No cambia el sabor. O sea, la grana solamente tiene puro color.
It appears on the nutrition label as Carmine, Natural Red 4, Crimson Lake, or E120 in the European Union. Carmine is also frequently used in the cosmetic industry. And that
I
use
don't care what you say now. If you're watching this video and you eat any of those products, whether it be the yogurt or, you know what I mean, any of that stuff, when you go to eat it now, you're going to think about this. The bug that went into creating the dye for the color. You're going to think about this.
is anything but new. Cochineal dates back thousands of years in Mexico. It was used in lipsticks, textiles, royal headdresses, and wall art like those in the pyramids of Montalban. After Hernan Cortes conquered the Aztecs, he brought cochineal back to Europe. And it quickly replaced European dyes because cochineal fixed onto wool and silk better, lasted longer, and created a more vibrant red.
About 15 times more powerful than anything that had been seen before.
It came to represent power, showing up in the highest of fashion. The Catholic Church used it in its red cardinal robes, and the British Army used it in their red coats. And soon, artists like Van Gogh, Renoir, and Rembrandt were painting cochineals into their masterpieces.
Wow.
In the 1800s, women in the United States started using it to color food, from cakes and candies to jellies and pickled red cabbage. But then in 1856, synthetic dyes were invented, first with mauve, made from byproducts of coal, and then in 1878 with red number 2, made from petroleum.
It was very difficult to compete because they had lower prices, larger volume, and similar qualities.
And these synthetics just about wiped out cochineal production in Mexico. Then in 1976, the FDA banned red number 2 under suspicion it could cause cancer. And so began a renewed interest in natural dyes. But at that point,
Don't that sound familiar? Like everything else they try to do and change up and quote unquote make better and this, that, and the third and use different products. We end up finding out 10 years, 20 years down the line, 15, that it was a health defect. It's been causing health defects to us. No, let's stick with the originals.
almost no cochineal growers left in the country. Catalina's family was one of just 3 still working with the insects. So she made it her life mission to preserve this bug and teach others about cochineal. She started selling the dye to local artisans and chefs and turned her farm into a museum to lead workshops for people interested in the bug.
Por amor a los insectos. Creo que nuestro corazón está con los insectos, nuestra vida está con los insectos.
But much of Catalina's work has been reversed in the last 2 decades. Brands like the liqueur Campari and Starbucks stopped using carmine due to pressure from vegetarian customers. The pandemic was another blow. Orders stopped completely for Carmona. And that's when she decided to stop cochineal production.
Se viene la pandemia y se acabó todo.
Last year, she produced 400 kilos of the bug. This year, she expects just 50 kilos.
En 2 meses desaparece el espacio.
She switched this entire greenhouse to tomatoes.
Pues sí necesito algo que me genere dinero.
So can Mexican producers save their cochineal? The answer could lie with Peru. The government started investing in cochineal farming in the 1990s to help boost employment in rural parts of the country. And now Peru dominates more than 80% of the market. American-based liqueur brands have started using it again in place of synthetic dyes. It was even the inspiration for Pantone's Color of the Year. And there's growing demand across the globe. But Peru has some advantages. The country produces a wild kind of cochineal that grows outdoors without much farmer involvement so it's cheaper. And while Mexican domesticated cochineal have more carminic acid, they also need to be grown indoors to protect from parasites. To be able to deliver large-scale orders from international buyers, farmers like Catalina would have to build more greenhouses and hire labor. But that's too expensive.
Right.
Catalina had to turn down 2 letters of interest from English buyers because she simply couldn't produce the amount of dye they needed. Experts say investments from the Mexican government could help farmers.
To provide basically seed money to Oaxaca peasant women.
In the meantime, Catalina hopes to keep educating every visitor who stops by her farm.
Creo que hay oportunidad para que esta cultura renazca.
Just like she taught her daughter Claudia, who's won awards for her work with the bug.
Sin el apoyo pues de los hijos, a lo mejor se hubiera ya perdido este trabajo que viene desarrollando mi mamá.
But until investments or customers come, some cochineals will be lost. And Catalina will be here, caring for her bunny cactuses and tiny little bugs.
Y mantener vivo esta especie, que creemos que es un legado cultural del México antiguo.
It's been more than 60 million years since the dinosaurs ruled the Earth, and after a city-sized asteroid wiped out 3/4 of all living species on our planet. But how exactly this doomed the dinosaurs remained unclear for a long time. Now, scientists previously thought that this was due to the soot produced from wildfires triggering a global winter, but there is a new study out that suggests that the fine dust from the pulverized asteroid may have played a bigger role than previously known, blocking out the sunlight and shutting down life for nearly 2 years. That caused a massive collapse in the food chain, ultimately leading to a mass extinction and the end of the dinosaur age. Joining me now to discuss this is astrophysicist Hakeem.
Something that I believe that could eventually happen to us as well, that could wipe us out. And I think it could come from one of these super volcanoes, though.
Oluseyi. And Hakeem, you are here to really solve a huge mystery for me and so many other people. This is a study published in the journal Nature Geoscience, and it seeks to answer this question. Why is it that we didn't know this before? And do you think it's plausible personally?
Well, it's plausible because it is based on real data. So the actual material is crazy, but it's 66 million years old, but we can still go and gather it and see what's in there. And so they actually found this fine dust, and that was the experimenters. But then on the computational side, they had to actually create these models that show not only how the dust interacts with sunlight, does it absorb it, does it reflect it, but also how does the dust interact with the atmosphere. And what they found is that this particular type of material could stay airborne for 15 years.
That's a problem. The problem that we don't know or understand or haven't figured out quite yet, if we know if it actually killed off the dinosaurs, and that this stuff could be present itself at any given time during our lifetimes and then create this problem. We have to figure this out.
Wow.
Yeah.
And producing a basically chain reaction.
Yes.
Killing off plant life first,
Yes,
and that is what would have caused the dinosaurs to basically go extinct?
Pretty
Right.
much.
So when you shut down photosynthesis, right? So basically sunlight isn't making it to the ground. So plants aren't able to make their food. So the plant eaters have no source of food to eat. So now what does that mean? That means that everything that eats plants is going to die and everything that eats those animals is going to die. So what really determined who was going to live and who was not going to live when this event occurred was how much you needed to eat. So for example, why did the dinosaurs die, but the crocodilians and the alligators, they survived? The reason is because dinosaurs were warm-blooded like us, and just like we need to eat 3 meals a day to live, those big dinosaurs needed a lot of food. A crocodile today, because they're cold-blooded, they don't need as much energy. So if they eat once a year, they can survive. So the small things survive, the cold-blooded small things survive. But if you were big and warm-blooded, once the food web shut down, you had your days were numbered.
Never knew that about crocodiles. It looks like we're never going to get rid of those jokers there, bro. I thought eventually they may phase out, but hearing that, They only got to eat once a year. Yeah. We're not getting rid of them anytime soon. They'll probably be around after we're gone.
So the science behind this relies on a computer model that simulated what the atmosphere would have been like at that time. Is there anything that we can take away from that as we try to project forward? We're talking a lot about climate change and how our activity as humans is affecting our atmosphere. What can we take away?
Well, one thing to know is that our atmosphere is a really, really thin layer. So even in the lifetimes of modern humans, we've had 3 big atmospheric emergencies. We've had acid rain, we've had the old hole in the ozone layer, and now we have global climate change, the warming of the global climate. And so this isn't the first time it's happened. That event did it. So outer space can do it through impacts, geology can do it through volcanoes, and life also does it. So what does this mean? What we've done so far is we've just lived our lives, and then we go, oops, look what we did. Let's find a way to solve it, right? We could be a little bit more mindful and also recognize that this particular type of particulate matter does have this big outsized impact at cooling the planet and shutting down sunlight. So, you know, it's another thing to watch out for.
As if we didn't need another thing already. You know what I mean? But listen, this is stuff I've been presenting and showing and saying and pushing to the forefront. We need to keep this to the forefront, pay attention, try to figure out and get ourselves a game plan. We need it.